Hi everyone, this is Elena of the Witches Box, and I'm here today with another episode of Witch Booktube. And today we're going to be talking about a book called Water Magic by Lilith Dorsey. First and foremost, you know who I am, and you know that I'm all about the look it. I love the design. This is what's interesting. I don't know all the ins and outs of book design, and when you have a book with a publisher, how do you decide what the design is? I'm not sure because last week or 2 weeks ago, you know, I had some critical words for the design for the same publisher on another book. But then you've got something like this, and this is beautiful. I love this. Yeah, it's gorgeous artwork. So there's that. Let me show you the spine. The spine. This is the back. Let me just dive in. I have a lot to say. So Lilith Dorsey is a practitioner of multiple magical traditions, including Afro-Caribbean, Celtic, and Native American spirituality. She is a filmmaker who created the documentary Bodies of Water and also was choreographer and lead dancer for jazz legend Dr. John's Night Tripper Voodoo show. She is co-host of the YouTube show What Witchcraft and Voodoo and the author of several titles, including Orishas, Goddesses, and Voodoo Queens through Wiser 2020. And you can visit her online at www.lilithdorsey.com. That will be linked down below. So there's that. So this book is the first book to drop in a 4-book series that Llewellyn is putting out on the elements. The book is broken up into 3 parts. Part 1 is history, folklore, and mythology. And it talks about water throughout time and culture, mythological watery beasts and places, water and the divine, sacred water sites. Those of you who've been subscribed to the Witches Box for a while remember that I sent the red well water and the white spring water from Glastonbury to you guys. I had really hoped to come back or to go back and get water and bring it back, but one day. Okay, so part 2 is working with the elements of water, the element of water in magic, water herbs and botanicals, water crystals, stones and shells, and water animal guides. Part 3 is recipes, rituals, and spellcraft, and you get magical waters, baths, salts, and washes. Water in divination and dreams, water spells and other magic, holiday rituals, and the water wheel of the year. Really quickly, this table of contents just triggered a realization for me, which is really interesting. So this book went out for our November Water Magic Box. I had heard about this book series. I knew this book was dropping this fall. We got an advance copy. I read it. I loved it. Spoiler, I loved it. And then I chose it for the November box that went out for Water Magic. And then just as a side note, Lilith Dorsey joined us for our deep dive gathering. Was amazing. And we still have some of these books available. If you want one, and there's still some available, get it. You will get the link to the recording for that deep dive where she shares all sorts of wisdom. So there's that little okay? But what I'm realizing is that when I create the themes, particularly the themes for each of the monthly boxes, there isn't necessarily always a through line. And when this book came into my field of consciousness, I really love the idea of going deeper into the elements, because there will be this book. You will hear about the other 3 books that are coming out in 2021. They're going to come out throughout the year. So Earth, Air, Fire, and this one first, Water. And I'm going to get to what my present time realization was. So I'm going to circle around and then go there. Throughout the course of all the things that we do here at the Witches Box, the elements has come up often. And they've come up often either in lives like this, booktube reviews like this, or we did an element box. And that element box was basically like an introduction to working with the elements, where you had all 4 elements in the box and like a little ritual for each one, so that you can begin to tap into what each of the elements were. There have been actually several books on the elements that we've sent out through the Witches book subscription. I say all that because this book is fantastic, so I probably would have chosen it anyway, but the intention behind the Water Magic Box and the elemental work that we'll be doing next year, and the books that I'll be sharing with you here on YouTube through the Witches Booktube, are on elements, because in the grand scheme of your witchcraft life, regardless of your tradition or your specialization or your interest, there is an internal witch muscle deeply tied to our intuition, deeply tied to our psychic capacity, but really it's about our capacity to connect and to understand the energetic frequencies that we are dealing with on a daily basis. It takes work. It takes practice. It does, because we work with those energies, and when we cast a spell, we work with those energies when we're trying to heal other things, other people, ourselves. We work with those energies when we try to connect with our ancestors, when we try to and work with and meet the natural elements around us, the natural beings, the ancestors of the land, the fae, all the things. We start to work with and deal with a language of the unseen that's about deciphering the different energetic flavors of a thing. Okay? And a thing, let's say a person, comes with a lot of complicated energetic fields. When you work with the elements are the base for everything else. They are, I don't know, I think people might argue with me on this, but I think that they are purely themselves. So that when you work with water, and then you switch over and you work with fire, over time, you're going to get really adept at deciphering the difference. There is a different speed or pace to one element as opposed to the other. There's a different texture. And when I say these things, yes, you think texture like physical texture. It is, but it's more of an etheric texture, right? The seen, the unseen. You start to also learn for yourself what your sensory language is. For me, there literally is a texture, and it's not necessarily, of course, if you touch water, it feels very different than earth. Yes, there's that at a base, but energetically, there's a different texture, there's a different sound, there's a different effect on me if I solely focus on one as opposed to the other. When you're trying to practice that muscle, the elements are the perfect place to start with this kind of practice, because they're so uniquely or purely their own thing, and because they're so readily available, and you can move from one to the other specifically to kind of play with what they feel like and how they're different, so that when they're all intermixed into a thing, into the creation around you, into nature around you, you can begin to decipher how much of each element is there, what element is more at play than the other, all of these different things. So I say that because we circle around this topic often and in different ways. And when this book came up, it offers a deeper layer than what we've offered in the past through the Witch's Box. Although, like the Scott Cunningham books on Earth Power and Earth Element, those are amazing books for practicing and working with the elements, yes. But this book, I have a description for it, and I want you to understand it. I don't know how to explain it to you in a way that isn't going to come off as something that is easily dismissible. And what I mean by that is that this book, a good chunk of this book, is probably the most detailed correspondence list for water that you're ever going to find. And a correspondence list can be super helpful when you're a beginner and you want to have an idea of what what things are connected, what the symbolism and the metaphor of this one thing is across different disciplines. But when you go deeper with a correspondence list, it gives you all sorts of new avenues with which to meet the thing that you're trying to work with. So this particular book shares with you botanical correspondences. There's a whole bestiary list of different animals that you can work with, mythological stories that you can work with, deities that you can work with, right? So you have all of these different inroads to get you or to introduce you deeper into water. I really appreciated the level of detail in this book is staggering to me. And I really, really appreciated it. So there's a lot to be learned about water in time and culture, the context, and all the different ways that water has played into culture in that way in history. The watery beasts, the places of sacred water sites. We had a whole conversation on collecting sacred water from different places and the different work that you can do with that. Water that is in a lake is different than the water that you're going to find in a river, in the ocean, spring water, right? All the different types of water and sources for water and the different magic to do with those waters. We talked a lot about, having an entire wall of different waters and bottles. One of the things that comes in the box is a beautiful empty hermetically sealable flask bottle that's empty because it's there for you to use to collect your sacred water from whatever working you're doing from the book. So that there is this detailed of a list, and then you get to the rituals, then you get to the sacred baths and all the things. It's so helpful to have it all in one book, but it also gives you so much, like a vaster field to work with water, which I thought was fantastic. All of that, and as I was reading the table of contents, I really had a realization. It was just so strange because I hadn't done this consciously. Because each month when I put together a theme for a witch's box to send out, yes, it reflects on some level something that I'm working on or something that's been up for me that I'll then wrap into sharing with you so we can do something with it together. But they tend to be independent of each other, right? So I don't even know. Let's have an example. We did runes, and then we did salt, and then we did a Jupiter box, right? Those things, yeah, it's all witchcraft, it's all energy, it's all magical work, but they look seemingly different. They feel like seemingly very different and separate themes. As I was reading the table of contents, I just realized we did a water magic box in November. The box that's already shipped out for December is all on planetary magic, specifically on the moon and water, because watery moon, those things are corresponding to each other. And then in January, and this is like sneaky peek that I'm just going to deliver now, January is all about the sacred bath. And I just put it all together now that those boxes are all about water. And there are things that are coming in each of the subsequent boxes that support and work with the boxes before that. That wasn't intentional. But apparently water's having its way with me, right? So anyway, I just had that in the moment realization. Do with that what you like. I was just sharing. So all that to say, yeah, I'm excited for this series that Llewellyn is doing. I think that we need these books. I think that the generosity of information and resources is gorgeous. The rituals in the back, the recipes in the back are all really helpful and in and of themselves practices that you can dive into for a while. So I really appreciated the book. It's why I chose it. It's why I'm really looking forward to the next 3 as they come out over 2021. Lilith Dorsey was a pleasure to hang out with on Zoom in our deep dive gathering, and just a wealth of information. There are a lot of books out there that I would recommend. This is definitely one of them. I would also recommend that you all check out whatever other books she's written. There's a lot of wisdom there, and I think that we can all benefit from listening to or reading the books that are out there. And I haven't actually researched this, so I probably shouldn't say it. However, I just came off of doing an IG live because I'm doing them now on Tuesdays and I record these on Tuesday. And the question came up, do I know of any of the witchcraft books that we have read or go through that are translated in Spanish? And quite frankly, I don't know who's doing that, or if the 2 publishers that I really work with closely or the most translate their books into Spanish. However, in that chat, someone said that Lilith Dorsey's books, or at least some of her books, are in Spanish, which is interesting. So I put that out there for no other reason other than it came up in IG. I'm going to share it here and I'm going to do some research on it. If any of you, because I know that there are a lot of Latinx followers out there, and it's particularly this person who asked was in Puerto Rico, and we have quite a few Puerto Rican witches that are subscribed to the books. If any of you know of a publisher that's putting out witchcraft books like the ones that we talk about in Spanish, let me know. I'm definitely going to do my own due diligence and check out Llewellyn and Weiser and see if they do, or who else may be out there and who's publishing these books in Spanish, because there's definitely an audience for it. And I was excited to hear that Lilith Dorsey has books in Spanish. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, loved it. Loved it. Even if you are a seasoned witch, we are all definitely supported and grown or expanded by working with the elements and diving back into, there's just so many applications for it. So books like this, I get really excited about because there's just so much in, it's not a small book, but it's not a huge book. There's a lot in here. So there you go. Recommend it. Lovely. There are still some of these boxes, I think, available by the time this comes out. But the link to this particular book and to all her other books will be down below. And yeah, that's it. Have a wonderful day. See you all in the weeks to come. Take care.